There we go. Hi, Peter Charles here, Hooked for Life Fly Fishing. And today in this video, let's talk about the issue of casting very heavily weighted flies for smallmouth. It's very common for us to use large, high drag, heavily weighted flies when we're trying to fish deep for smallmouth. And I've done a lot of that kind of fishing. It's not the same as casting a dry fly for trout. We have to change the way we cast a fly. So in this video, we're going to have a look at some of the techniques I use to get big flies out of the water and on their way. Because it's not difficult, but there's a few things we have to pay attention to. And when we do, it's surprisingly straightforward and it's not a big deal. So let's take a quick look. Okay, I'm out in the Grand River today with my Geolumis Asquith 6-weight. I've got a 6-weight Airflow Kelly Galloop streamer line and my heavy, high drag headstander fly. And this thing is heavy. It has a lot of drag with its rabbit strip wing, and that rabbit strip wing soaks up water and it gets ugly to cast. So what we're going to look at today is how to cast these flies in a way that allows you to get a good cast off, get some distance when you need it, and avoid the dreaded bounce, because when these things start bouncing, things go badly wrong. So I'm going to talk about what we need to do to avoid bouncing. Now I'm going to bring the fly up. I'm going to make a nice smooth roll cast, smooth back cast, and you notice I turned my head. I'll look behind me. That's the key when you're casting a weighted fly. The timing has to be perfect, because if you move too early, if you cast too early, that fly will kick around and hit the water, and it will start bouncing and you'll lose the load on the rod, because as soon as the bounce starts, the load's gone. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to roll this out. I bring the rear taper into the guides. I don't try to do this with the taper out of the guides. And I bring it out and I just roll it in front of me. And if it doesn't go out, do it again. Yeah, see, I've got too much line out. The roll cast is not working. So let's start that again. There we go. That's the problem. If you got too much line out and you're into the rear taper, you'll have problems on the lift. Speaking about the lift, you want the lift to be as smooth as you possibly can be. You don't want to yank it out of the water, because if you yank it out of the water, you're going to set that thing bouncing on you. And because it's going to come out of the water with a pop. When it frees itself from the water, it will shoot backwards with energy, and your rod will unload, and then your cast goes to pot. So the whole thing is to keep the load on the rod at all times. So if you're going to pick it up nice and smooth. If you're going to false cast, again, smooth as you possibly can. You can double haul them, you can false cast them, but you have to be smooth. When you get it going smoothly, these flies will cast quite well. But as soon as it starts bouncing, when it's hitting the water behind you, all these various problems, when these things start happening, that's really bad. And they don't want to come out of the water. That's the thing. They really don't want to come out of the water. One of the tricks you can learn is shooting line into your back cast. You don't have a lot of line out of the guides to get this thing up out of the water. Oh, there was a fish. I've got a long tail on this fly, so small fish tend to grab the tail. So where was I? Fish interrupted. As I say, these things don't want to come out of the water smoothly. It's up to us to get them out smooth. So I make a nice smooth roll cast, shoot some line into the back cast, then send it on its way. And I try to avoid false casting as much as possible, because when you false cast, you're increasing the odds of things going wrong. So without a false cast, it tends to be a lot smoother. So that's why I roll cast it up onto the water first. I pop it up in front of the water. You know, presumably if I'm working downstream, I've already fished that water, so I don't care about dropping the fly into that. I'll just roll it out, pick it up nice and smoothly, gone. And I use a water load coming off. If I do it nice and smooth with that water load, I get a really high energy back cast. I can shoot some line into the back cast, and then it's gone. No false casting. This is how I also cast full sinking lines. I do exactly the same thing. So, get it up, roll it in front of you, and you notice I turn my head, I look, I watch my back cast. If you don't watch your back casts, things go wrong. There are no style points in this game. So I don't care about itty bitty bitty loops. You know, I'm not looking to get points from the judges. I do what I need to do to get the line out there. And so if I have to throw a big wide open loop, I'll throw a big wide open loop. I don't care. This isn't casting little dry flies. So pull the rear taper into the guides, bring it up, roll it in front of you. Make a nice smooth extraction, nice smooth back cast. There we go. That's about, I don't know, 60 feet maybe. That's all I need here. I don't want to go any further. I'll be into shallow water and I'll be snagging up. But there's a couple of other things you want to do. Don't work with too little a line. I'll retrieve some here and I'll show you the problems when you work with too short a line. So the problem is with too short a line, you don't have enough mass in the line to get it going, and the tendency is for that fly to want to flop over and kick around. So if you put enough energy to turn it over, it starts kicking back at you. If you don't put quite enough energy, it just falls out of the air and it doesn't turn over. And that's simply because you don't have enough line out. There is a sort of a minimum amount, I'd say roughly, with this particular setup, I'd say about 20 feet of fly line. Once I've got that, everything starts working. I've got enough mass in the head of the line to drive the fly. But if I don't have enough line out of the guides, it's not going to work very well. And I'll be fighting it the whole time. So somewhere in that 15-20 foot of line out of the guides, I've got enough to make a roll cast, got enough to make my back cast, and I got enough mass to turn it over. So little things like that. Use enough line. Don't try to cast, do your pickup with the rear taper out of the guides. Keep the rear taper in the guides. Shoot line into your back cast. Watch your back cast. Don't worry about itty bitty loops. Try to avoid false casting, but you can do it, but you have to be smooth. So if I want a false cast, I have to be really lazy. And you can see it's falling apart on me. That's exactly what happens if you false cast too much. You start to lose energy, and then you're forced into double hauling a short amount of line. It just is best avoided. If you can get away without a false cast, do it. That's why I rolled it up in front of me, pull it out, send it on its way, boom, and it goes. So those are the keys to this particular deal. You're trying to get this heavy, high drag fly out of the water on its way, dealing with wind, dealing with current, dealing with fish that bite the wing. And you just want to make it as easy for yourself as possible. And smoothness is the key. No bouncing. You do not want that thing bouncing on the back cast. That thing bounces on the back cast, you know, your cast is shot. So you'll see that I'm working very carefully to avoid that bounce, and the key for that is looking behind you. So, you know what, I'm going to change the fly now because they've seen this fly a lot. I'm going to put on something else. Again, weighted. A little smaller though, hopefully they'll be able to grab it instead of just grabbing the wing. And we'll see if we can get a fish on camera. I think I've worn out my welcome. So we'll call it a day and pack the cameras up, and maybe I'll catch a fish in a different spot. Oh, so as you can see, it's not a big deal to cast these flies. The key is to be nice and smooth, slow, extract smoothly, don't make that fly pop out of the water, turn your head, look at your back cast, You can sometimes rely on the feel when you get used to it, but when you're first starting out casting large, heavily weighted flies, turn your head and look. Let that cast roll out. If you start the forward cast too soon, bad things happen. To get the timing right, and the timing does change with a weighted fly, it takes a while for that fly to roll out, turn your head and look. I think that's probably the most important thing I can say is these 2 points. Be smooth, turn your head and look. You do those 2 things, you can be able to cast a weighted fly without a whole lot of problem. So, give it a try. I mean, they're great fish catchers. I know in this video, the fish weren't cooperative. They get hit in the tail of the fly. But, you know, a few days later, I pulled a really nice big one out of one of those flies. So it makes it all worthwhile. So give it a try. Cheers. There we go.
Just that question.
Yep. Another.